300 head going hell-bent for the horizon.
Did not bid, goddamn praise the Lord.
Hey, look at that guy.
Oh, it's one job I'd never do.
I'm drunk this time.
Edgar, get your butt down.
What's going on? Did you notice anything weird? There he goes!
All right, get back.
I got it.
Run, Val, run!
On it.
In the arid and desolate heart of Nevada, an unimaginable terror lurks beneath the earth. Monstrous subterranean creatures, colossal nightmare worms, emerge with devastating fury, tearing through the desert and leaving a trail of blood and chaos as they annihilate livestock with terrifying voracity. In the midst of this horror, handymen Val McKee and Earl Bassett, fed up with life in the forgotten, dusty corner of Perfection Valley, a ghost town with barely 14 souls, desperately plan to escape the promise of a better life in nearby Bixby. But fate, cruel and merciless, plays a foul trick on them. Just as they're about to leave that cursed place behind, they stumble upon a scene that chills them to the bone. Edgar, dead of thirst, desperately clinging to a power tower as if trying to escape an invisible horror. Further on, old Farmer Fred and his entire flock of sheep lie torn apart, victims of a savage and unknown force. With their hearts in their throats, Val and Earl rush back to Perfection to warn the few inhabitants of the nightmare that's coming. But the terror doesn't end there. Two workers repairing the only paved road, the fragile thread connecting Perfection to the outside world, are brutally eliminated. A landslide, caused by the ferocious attack of these hellish creatures, blocks the road, trapping everyone in a terrifying fate from which there is no escape. The desert itself seems to be conspiring to keep them prisoners in this deadly trap. In a desperate attempt to escape the hell that has broken loose in Perfection Valley, Val and Earl ride toward Bixby, their hearts pounding 1,000 beats a minute and the desert dust blinding them. But the horror pursues them like a relentless shadow. First, they discover a scene that takes their breath away. The town doctor and his wife, brutally murdered, lie like broken puppets, victims of an invisible terror that lurks under the earth. Then, in a blood-chilling instant, they see it. One of those subterranean abominations, a colossal worm-like monster, emerges with supernatural fury, its jaws open like a nightmare abyss. In its frantic pursuit, the beast smashes into the reinforced concrete wall of a drainage channel, an impact so brutal that the creature dies in a burst of guts, but not before devouring the horses in a macabre feast, leaving Val and Earl trembling with terror and awe. In the midst of the chaos, they cross paths with Rhonda, a geologist whose rational mind clashes with the horror she has just witnessed. With a mixture of fascination and panic, Rhonda reveals a chilling truth. These creatures are not just monsters, they are prehistoric relics, older than any known fossil. Worse still, the seismographs she has placed in the desert have detected not one, but 3 of these infernal beasts, still alive, moving simultaneously in different places, like predators stalking in the darkness. after a narrow escape from the siege of one of these creatures, which seemed to be enjoying the hunt. The trio returns to perfection, where panic has already taken hold of the few remaining inhabitants. In the dusty general store of the Chinese owner Walter Chong, who names these aberrations grabbers, a name that would later resonate as graboid and an echo of terror, they gather with the last survivors, Nancy and her daughter Mindy. Trapped in a whirlwind of fear, the loyal friends Nestor and Miguel, the joker Melvin, whose facade of bravery crumbles, and the eccentric Gummer couple obsessed with weapons and barricaded in their bunker house as if waiting for the end of the world. Together, they face the terrifying reality. They are surrounded, isolated, and the jaws of death lurk from the depths. Trapped in a whirlwind of pure terror, the group of survivors gathers in a frenzy of panic, their hearts beating in unison as they try to figure out how to confront an enemy as grotesque as it is relentless. Rhonda, with her scientific mind fighting against fear, reveals a chilling truth. These creatures, blind as the abyss itself, hunt guided by the slightest vibration of the ground, turning every step, every whisper, into a death sentence. The horror erupts when Melvin, in an instant of carelessness, is nearly caught by one of the beasts, forcing everyone to scatter in desperate chaos. Earl, Val, Chong, Rhonda, and Miguel barricade themselves in the store, their breath catching. Nestor takes refuge in his trailer, trembling. Melvin hides in a shack, and Nancy locks herself in her house, praying for protection. But the true horror strikes like lightning. Little Mindy, oblivious of the danger, plays in the street, her Walkman headphones drowning out the roar of approaching death from the depths. Val, Rhonda, and Nancy, driven by desperate instinct, run toward the girl in an act of bravery that defies hell itself. The monsters, like specters from a nightmare, burst forth with devastating fury. Nancy and Mindy manage to take refuge in their house by a heartbreakingly narrow margin, while Val and Rhonda struggle to return to the store. In a moment of pure horror, Rhonda gets caught in barbed wire, her screams muffled by panic as she feels the ground tremble beneath the beast's jaws. Val, with the courage of man on the edge of the abyss, frees her at the last second, snatching her from the clutches of death. But the nightmare doesn't end. In the store, the roar of Chang's faulty freezer attracts one of the creatures, which bursts the floor like an unleashed demon. Before the horrified eyes of the others, Chang is caught and devoured alive, his final scream echoing like a harbinger of doom. The survivors, their souls shattered, seek refuge on the rooftops. Val, Earl, and Miguel climb onto the store's roof. Rhonda clings to the water tank like a lifeline, while the others clamber onto the roofs of their own houses, knowing that the monsters, for now, cannot reach them. But the silence of the desert is deceiving, and death waits, patient, beneath the earth. Panic intensifies as Val and Earl, with trembling hands, manage to radio Burt Gummer, the eccentric gun lover who lives barricaded with his wife in their isolated fortress. With voices broken by fear, they warn him that one of those subterranean abominations is heading toward them, a bloodthirsty monster that will stop at nothing. Armed to the teeth with an arsenal that seems to defy the apocalypse itself, Burt and his wife unleash a storm of heavy bullets on the creature, tearing it apart in a burst of guts that stains the ground red. Gasping, they climb onto the roof of their bunker house, where they discover, with fleeting relief, that the beast cannot reach them as long as they remain underground. But hope is fragile, and the desert holds more horrors. The two remaining creatures, like demons in the depths, unleash their fury on the foundations of the houses, making the very earth tremble with an almost intelligent malice. Nestor, trapped in his fragile trailer, has no escape. In an instant of pure terror, He is snatched from the world by the jaws of one of the beasts, his scream lost in the desert dust. Desperation pushes Miguel to an act of reckless bravery. With a garden tractor, he creates a deafening noise that distracts the monsters, giving Val the opportunity to reach a heavy bulldozer. With his heart in his throat, Val transports the survivors one by one to reunite with the Gummers, who, in a frenzy of determination, have manufactured homemade explosives, ready to face hell itself. With a plan as audacious as it is desperate, they decide to flee to the mountains, where the impenetrable granite promises refuge from the creatures that cannot drill through it. Aboard the bulldozer, a steel colossus that rumbles like a last bastion of hope, the survivors race toward their salvation. But the beasts, cunning and merciless, have set a trap. The ground sinks beneath them, revealing a huge hole excavated by the monsters, an abyss that seems to mock their struggle. Trapped, with their hearts on the verge of collapse, the fugitives are forced to seek refuge on a solitary rock, surrounded by a deadly silence that conceals the stalking creatures. Death watches them from the depths, and every vibration in the ground is a reminder that time is running out. The tension among the survivors, trapped on that solitary rock in the middle of the desert, is a knot that chokes them. Fear and despair consume them, and the fragile alliance shatters when Val and Burt clash in a fierce argument, their voices heavy with rage and panic. Burt, clinging to the idea of holding out on the roof of his bunker house, refuses to back down, but the horror pushes them all to the edge of the abyss. In an act of heartbreaking bravery, Burt makes a blood-chilling decision. He sacrifices himself, rushing to meet one of the creatures with an explosive in his hand. The detonation shakes the desert, a blast of fire and dust that tears the monster to pieces, leaving the survivors speechless at his sacrifice. Burt's heroic act ignites a spark of hope in Earl, who, with a mix of genius and desperation, proposes using dynamite as a deadly lure. The strategy works with lethal precision. One of the monsters, drawn by the bait, is destroyed in an explosion that resonates like a cry of victory. But the last graboid, cunning and merciless, does not fall for the trap. Val's mind, on the verge of collapse, comes up with a suicidal plan to become the bait himself. With his heart beating like a war drum, Val, Earl, and Rhonda run toward a cliff. But it is Val who gambles his life in a final bet. He runs with all his might, feeling the ground tremble under the onslaughts of the monster pursuing him with open jaws. At the last second, with the edge of the abyss inches away, Val moves aside in a desperate motion, letting the creature, blinded by its own fury, plunge into the void. The final stick of dynamite, thrown with precision, seals its fate. The monster crashes to the ground in an explosion of flesh and rock, a brutal end to the nightmare that was hunting them. Exhausted, their souls marked by terror and loss, the survivors return to perfection, a town that now seems a silent echo of its former tranquility. In the midst of the ruins of their struggle, Val, with the weight of survival still on his shoulders, finds the courage to open his heart. He approaches Rhonda, and in a moment of pure humanity, he kisses her, sealing a spark of hope in a place where death had reigned. The small town, bathed in the desert sun, regains its calm, but the echo of the graboid still resonates in their hearts, a reminder of the nightmare that almost devoured them.